Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
And welcome into Purple Access. It is Judd Zolgad. It is Declan Goff, as always. And, of course, we rotate our co-hosts every week. Some weeks it's Chip Scoggins, the Star Tribune, and other times it is our good friend Tyler Fornes. VikingsWire.com is where you can find his work and his podcast. Absolutely outstanding stuff. And some Sports Dad columns there as well. VikingsWire.com. This episode of Purple Access, also, before we start, is brought to you by the new Minnesota Lottery Vikings scratch game, which is the official scratch game, of course, of the Vikings. You can win up to $100,000 or second chance prizes. This includes season tickets or an away game trip. That's officially exciting. The Minnesota Lottery, you just say, I am in. Must be 18 or older to play. So the lottery, when it comes to the Vikings, is a good thing, Tyler Fornes. When it comes to the Vikings' 0-2 start, there is panic from some. There is calm from other people, including the team, which is trying to say that things could be fine. Obviously, though, this is, as the kids like to say, suboptimal. So where do you stand in a team that is 0-2 after losses to the Buccaneers and to Philadelphia, 7 turnovers in 2 games? And the reality is this: if this team cleaned up those mistakes, it very easily could be 2-0.
Even if you fumble 2 less times, the Vikings have 7 total fumbles so far this season. One of them was the Alexander Madison fumble last night that ended up being called back because of penalty. And they had 2 against the Bucs, 4 against the Eagles. That's brutal. If you just take 2 of those away, 1 in each game, it's probably a 2-0 start. And that's the most frustrating. But the way I look at this team, like, Kirk Cousins is outside of, like, I'd say 3 plays, the 2 strip sacks and the interception, has been playing really, really good football. And it's honestly going to be overshadowed. I heard Colin Cowherd outright say that Kirk Cousins played bad in another primetime game. I'm sorry. Did you watch the game last night? None of that had to do with Kirk Cousins. Yeah, he could have had a better internal clock on the strip sack, but he was throwing darts. He was trusting his receivers, and I'm excited to get my hands on the All-22 so I can kind of watch to see how this all pieces together. But it's all about the running game. And one of the biggest weak points for this Vikings team was the trenches. And I talked about how I was a little worried about the defensive line, but scheme could kind of help that along. Well, Brian Flores, it looked like he was prioritizing not getting beat in coverage, which outside of 2 Devonta Smith plays, they averaged like 2.3 or 4 yards per pass. Like, it wasn't very good. And that's a net positive. The Vikings pass defense was excellent once again, but they got gashed in the running game. And how do you adjust for that? Do you try and go get a defensive lineman in the trade market or in free agency? Do you have to completely shift what you're trying to do in the front 7 so you can end up doing do you have to sacrifice in coverage, help the front 7? There's a lot of nuance to this. And early on in that game, the Eagles were running a basic college RPO offense that you see teams like Baylor, TCU run constantly. And you know what? Caleb Evans was crashing those screens. They were getting nothing. Anything with yards after the catch was being swallowed up immediately. Then they're like, all right, what if we just run right at him? Well, then it worked. And eventually, like, they never got more than like 10, 12 yards in a rush, but you get 6 yards after 6 yards after 6 yards after 6 yards. Mm-hmm. Any human being is just going to start to mentally get worn out and worn out and worn out. And that's an old school style of football, but it's going to be coming back because these linebackers are so small and they're meant to just cover all this space. But you can out physical them. And the Vikings got out physicaled. I have a lot of questions for Brian Flores about why Brian Asamoah is not playing. Ivan Pace Jr. is a massive hit as UDFA. You can't ask for anything more. In a general construct, having a UDFA out-snap your second round pick from last year, who was a projected starter, 107-16, is a problem. It's a problem. And it has absolutely nothing to do with Ivan Pace. It's the construct of what the argument is. Well, why is Asamoah not playing, Judd? Like, he's not on the injury reports. He seems to be practicing. What's the deal? He looked really good at the end of last year.
I think the time he missed in training camp bugged them. I also, so I would take your point right there and flip it as well, which is this: how many snaps can you play Jordan Hicks? Because that's my question. Jordan Hicks is not a young man. Jordan Hicks took a pay cut to come back, and Jordan Hicks in the first 2 games doesn't leave the field. And I'm not saying he's bad. I'm saying the ask there to me, your point about wearing down, which, by the way, the offense gave the defense no help because they kept turning the damn ball over in the first half. But your point's spot on. So I guess my question is, if you're going to go, if you're going to bring Asamoah in, are you really, why not bring him in for Hicks at times? Like, what did he do? How ticked off are you? How far behind do you feel he got? There's a lot of questions there, but I'm with you as far as I think you need to go find a big, fat guy to play in the middle of that line and at least present the opportunity to stop the run, because, death by paper cuts of 6 yards is almost worse than a big run, because it just gasses your entire defense.
At the same time, though, I'll counter with 2 things. One, wasn't Kyrus Tonga supposed to be that guy? Well, I thought he played very well last year. 345 pounds, a true nose tackle that you can play as a zero technique, and he can man both A gaps. That's what you need in this defense. And I thought the Vikings had it, and all of a sudden he's playing like 9 snaps. Where's the disconnect there? And the second thing I'll say is that I'd rather just die by paper cuts. Eventually we talk about regression, and the national media is going to drive me absolutely nuts, because all they're going to be like, oh, the Vikings are regressing. But you're not contextualizing what we're seeing. You're not contextualizing what the regression is. The regression is the Vikings are making dumb mistakes. They are fumbling the ball. They're turning it over at a massive rate. They're not playing bad football. The Vikings offense just averaged 6.44 yards per play against the Philadelphia Eagles. That's pretty good. Yeah, your highest pressure rate was David Questenberry, a 3rd-string tackle, who allowed 3 pressures in his 19 snaps. Ed Ingram only allowed 3 pressures in his 58 snaps, 48 dropbacks. That's not bad. You're looking at a team that held up relatively well considering the unit that they were facing. We thought it was all doom and gloom and they were just going to get absolutely destroyed. We had no Christian Darrisaw, and Udo was capable considering he was a backup. You're looking at all these things, and the Vikings are just giving the game away. They're giving it away. And the analysis surrounding this team is going to drive me absolutely up a wall, because there's going to be no context surrounding it. It's just so frustrating on so many levels. And I want answers on a lot of different things, especially surrounding the defensive line. I want answers surrounding, is KJ Osborne going to get benched now? He did not look very good. He had multiple drops. He was not gaining as much separation. I mean, outside of that touchdown, because that was just a beautifully drawn play by O'Connell. You have Jefferson and Osborne crossing each other in man match. So it's man coverage, but you're playing in a little zone where it's not like you just sit back and you drop and you stand in one spot. No, you are covering a guy until he gets to a certain benchmark, and then you pass him off to the next guy. Well, everybody just picked Jefferson, and Osborne had 20 yards of free space. So outside of that, he wasn't very good. And Addison looks like he's legit. I'm kind of just snowballing as a train wreck here just because it's so frustrating, every element of this team. But I want answers on a lot of different fronts, mainly Asamoah, and then what we're going to be doing on this defensive line.
Forno, how much of this 0-2 start in like a pie chart, which we love to do here on Purple Daily, how much of it is just bad luck? And bad luck, I mean fumbles, I mean these incredibly fluky turnovers, and how much is it just a bad football team or just normal football things, I guess? How much of this bad luck is really weighing on this 0-2 start for the Vikings?
Now, that's a really good question. Put me on the spot with a pie chart. I like this, Declan. We can do more of this. So if I were to take a look at who I would blame, I would probably put 80% of it on undisciplined football. Undisciplined football, meaning turnovers, timely penalties. That Jay Ward penalty, which I blame on Josh Metellus more than Jay Ward, because Metellus is the veteran and he was farther inside or farther in the neutral zone than Ward was. Ward was just on the outside, so it's a little easier for the line judge to be able to see. Like, that cost 4 points. All these turnovers, points. The Jefferson one, don't even get me started. I will yell about that, how dumb that rule is. I'll never forget this, Judd. I think it was 2003 or 2002, maybe 2001. Culpepper was playing the Panthers. Now, I think it was Steve Smith's first game, so it was 2003. And he's running he breaks the pocket and starts running towards the corner of the end zone. He stumbles on the Astrodome turf and his knee hits the football and it goes through the back of the end zone. And I'm thinking to myself as like a 13-year-old kid, I'm like, all right, Vikings get the ball back because you can't advance a fumble. That makes sense. You are not allowed to advance a fumble. Nope, turnover. Doesn't make any damn sense. And look, Jefferson is at fault because he lost control of the ball. He fumbled it. But the rule is absolutely absurd and it needs to be changed. It's needed to be changed for decades. And it's about time that they do something now. And you know what? If it happened to the Eagles, I'd say the same thing, because the Vikings shouldn't be able to benefit off that either. If you can't advance a fumble, you shouldn't lose it either.
So let's talk about the things that we've seen that are concerning that I don't know that you can fix, because you can, I mean, the fumbles are inexcusable, but you can fix those things. But let's talk about the lines. Let's talk about, and let's talk about the run game on both sides, because that's the one thing that is now on tape. I mean, Philadelphia with their run game put that on tape. And just like in 2006, when the Vikings under Tomlin had a great run defense, but couldn't stop the pass, Patriots came in here Halloween night, exposed them, and everybody else said, okay, that's the key to beat a team that I think was 4-2 at the time and missed the playoffs. Both sides of the ball, though, the inability to run the ball, and we can blame Madison. I think a lot of people are just being like, well, he's not Cook. I mean, but to me, it's a greater problem. Like, you can't even come close to establishing a run. And if you can't establish a run, you are going to have quick possessions, which is going to put your defense back out on the field. And then to your point as well, with how Flores is choosing things, it's almost like he knows that they'll get beaten so badly in the pass game if they do focus on the opposing team's run, that they're choosing to get beat in the run game. I have very big concerns about what the Eagles put on film that go far beyond a dumb penalty or 4 turnovers. I guess I want to know, how are you going to fix things that basically goes back to offseason decisions made by Adolfo Mensa and the personnel staff of who to have on this team?
The defensive line needs work. It needs assets, and it's not just at edge rusher. You need big boys. Jaquan Roy probably could have made a difference, but he ended up being an inactive. And It stinks that Darisaw got re-injured that ankle between the inactive list and the beginning of the game, because you could have really used Roy in that spot, because his specialty, it's kind of like what Dalvin Tomlinson was. That was his comp from Lance Zierlein of NFL.com coming out of college. Stop the run. I think Brian Flores is smart enough, and we've seen history of this, where he can adjust. It's not going to be something where you're going to see these looks and the Vikings just get gashed like this every single week. It'll probably happen once, maybe 2 more times throughout the season. He's going to adapt. He's going to adjust. And these guys on the back end are going to gain more and more trust because of how well they're playing. There's still some communication issues. That deep touchdown to Devonta Smith, on the surface, I don't think that's on a Caleb Evans. I actually think it's on Harrison Smith, based on what I saw the coverage was, and you saw Evans like, what in the world is this? I need to see the all-22 to confirm it. But he played well and was busting up screens. Murphy was consistent. They were great in coverage. And if you play great with help, then you can start taking some of that help away because your confidence level rises. Now you can focus more on the running game. So I think there's going to be adjustments there. On the other side of the ball with the running game, I blame Kevin O'Connell. You know what you have with these offensive linemen, and these offensive linemen are outside of Ed Ingram. They are designed for outside zone. Brian O'Neill, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, or in this case, Austin Schloman. They're designed to be able to climb to the second level and take guys out so you can do a one-cut back. That's what they're here for. You're asking them to do a little bit more duo and like mid zone and stuff. Like mid zone is not outside zone. It's a little different. And he's also not being patient enough with it. I don't think Madison is good enough to be a starting running back. He's an incredibly nice guy. Interviewed him at a cornhole tournament of all things.
He is a good
awesome person.
I like him too.
But at the end of the day, being an awesome person does not always translate to being good on the football field. He is just not a starting caliber running back. You can have a starting caliber running back and not pay them a bunch of money. It was still the right move to get rid of Dalvin Cook. But when you have O'Connell, who's not being patient enough to even try to establish a running game, 17 against the Buccaneers, 9 rushes against the Eagles. That you're not even trying at that point.
Where's Chandler?
Yeah, Chandler, 1 carry, 0 yards. I did have a prize picks. I was this close to $500 last night, Judd. $500. We were recording this Friday morning, and I needed a Kirk interception. It didn't go my way. I can live with that, but Chandler, I think you just got to see what you have in him. And like you have to at least try to establish a running game. And guess what? The 2 of the top 10 most efficient rushing attacks in a single game in the last 25 years were the Eagles last night and the Chargers in week 1 against the Dolphins. So you better be ready. The Austin Eckler is probably not going to play because he's hurt. Joshua Kelly's a very talented running back. They'll be here to try and gash us. And if you want to give your defense a little bit of a breather, you have to at least try and establish a running game. And that's on O'Connell right now.
At this point, Tyler, do you look to add a running back? I mean, there's still some free agents obviously out there. I wouldn't swing a trade for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that would just be pointless to me. But of the free agents out there, is it worth adding to this group, or would you rather just keep it in-house and maybe Madison starts to figure things out, or maybe it's Ty Chandler that ends up getting a bulk of these carries?
Let me forward this question to you before I answer, Declan. Do you think a running back fixes this running game?
No, not really.
That's where I'm at too. I don't think a running back fixes this running game because it's schematic. It's about Kevin O'Connell trying to establish the run. But why have they run a single jet sweep? Why haven't they tried some counter action? Why haven't they done anything other than super basic run concepts?
He's not being creative, and I am very surprised by that.
That to me, if you want to establish a running game, get gimmicky.
Yeah.
Get players thinking.
Yep.
And offensive coordinators do this all the time. You have setup plays. And when I play NCAA 14, all of a sudden I'll get, setup play for play action read. And all of a sudden, I'll be able to throw a comeback and nobody's within 10 yards of him because you set the defense up by running plays beforehand. Guess what? If you want to run play action split zone, run split zone 6 times. And then all of a sudden, Justin Jefferson fakes a block and he gets 5 yards of separation. You can do those kinds of things. And the effort's not there. And it's very frustrating. And there's so many little nuances to it. But you have to at least try to establish the run. Get gimmicky. Run Jordan Addison on jet sweeps. Do jet sweep action consistently to keep the linebackers flat-footed for just a split second, because that can make a difference between 5 yards and 50.
I agree completely. And off your point, what I don't get is you've got these, skill position-wise, I don't care what position they play, you've got these incredible athletes, right? Addison and Jefferson. And I mean, they're scary. They're scary. They can get you in a lot of different ways. And we've seen them, especially Justin, be used in training camp practices in what looks like creative packages, and then we don't see those. And I thought in year 2, being more comfortable with calling plays, first of all, but then also, having more of the personnel he wants. Josh Oliver was signed. TJ Hawkinson now here for an entire year. I thought we would begin to really see some of that creativity start to flow from O'Connell. And instead, we haven't seen a damn thing like that. And I guess I'm just very confused because it feels like his contemporaries are doing those sorts of things all the time. McVay, McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, right? There's a lot of people in his age group who he knows who get very creative, especially with guys who are damn near positionless. And Kevin's not doing that. And I guess I'm a little bit confused as to what he's afraid of last year I thought it was a bit conservative, but he also didn't have his team. Now he's got his personnel, and he's still sort of shying away from keeping teams off balance.
That's a great question. What's the deal? Where is the creativity? Now, some of these passing concepts are fun. The deep pass to Jordan Addison, Luke Braun broke it down real nice. It's a quarters beater. And a lot of quarters beaters that you see are pin concepts. So you have a post on one side and an in on the other. And then that you're trying to put that safety in conflict. And he tries to crash down. And a second he crashes down, you have single coverage. And the post is going to have leverage because at quarters, you're turned with your hips facing the ball. And you can just easily turn on that, and then he's got to flip and run upfield. Well, you had Justin Jefferson run a little like bubble screen, and then you had two seam routes. One of them like going like a fade, one of them kind of slanting over the middle, and that occupies that safety. Addison, touchdown. Those kind of things are creative. It's great. Where's that creativity with the run game? Where is that to try and establish anything? Why aren't we? Well, this feels like a drop back offense, and I'll give Kirk Cousins credit. Yep. It hasn't worked in the past. It's working really well now. He's got 6 touchdown passes, 1 interception. He's thrown for almost 800 yards. But the Vikings are 0-2 because there's no establishment of a run game. We're not able to stop the run, and there's no creativity or even effort, it feels like, in trying to establish a running game. I don't know enough about what Brian Flores is trying to do as of this second to try and stop it and how he made those adjustments. Sometimes they just don't work and you're just getting obliterated. It happens. And we'll learn from it and move on. But O'Connell's got to figure it out.
Forno, what do you make here, Jordan Addison? Now, a couple good games. I brought this up to Mackie and Judd earlier this weekend on Purple Daily that it feels a little reminiscent of when BC Johnson was getting early reps over Justin Jefferson his rookie year, and Addison's starting to flash a little bit. Obviously, I don't think Addison's on the level of JJ, but still clearly a better wide receiver than KJ. What do you make of Jordan Addison kind of now being buried, and should he now be just getting a lot more targets with KJ Osborne kind of having a disastrous start, I would say, to the season?
So I'll answer this in multifaceted ways. The biggest thing with Jefferson was, and it's been spoken about, he didn't know all the routes till like week 8. And that was one of the reasons why he didn't get a lot of playing time early. And then BC Johnson, he had been with the organization for a long time, and he had worked really hard to get to that point. So you give the incumbent the job, but that doesn't mean you get to keep it. And I think we're in a very similar thing with KJ Osborne. I think Osborne's a better player than BC Johnson ever was. But when you look at what Osborne is, he was drafted only as a kick returner and earned his way to becoming a starting wide receiver in the NFL. Deserves a lot of props for that. Really impressive. But you can't have performances like last night where you have multiple drops in key situations. I think Addison is just a better player. We knew he was a better player.
Yep.
But he's also playing like one at the beginning of his rookie year. And I think you're going to have to make that switch sooner rather than later. But that work ethic, how he's established himself in that locker room with the coaching staff, that makes a difference. And that may keep him in this job a little longer than we might think. But Addison getting 69% of the snaps is not a mistake.
So, bad news. No question that the Vikings lost. But you know what, guys? I've got some good news. Because there's one way where if you do lose, it's a positive. And that's if you lose weight. And that's what you can do thanks to my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers, who can help you take off the weight like they did with me a couple of years back. That's right. 40 pounds down, feeling great. And guess what? They're going to help you not only drop the weight, but keep that weight off. 3 consecutive years, they have been named the best weight loss program in the state. That's right, in the entire state. And right now, they have a special offer, which is 3 months free. So you join, you're going to get 3 months free. Imagine that. Free weight loss. 855-GO LIVEA, Livia.com. LIVEA, Livia.com. All right, Forno. So what is your confidence that this team can fix not only the dumb mental mistakes, but also that they can fix things in the next 10 days, to your point, where when the Chargers come to town And there's no question they're going to go off of the film that they see from the Vikings-Eagles game, that we don't see a repeat, especially in the ground game on both sides. What's your confidence that the Vikings can fix what ails them right now?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I put it about a 6.5. Okay. So I have faith in the coaching staff. I don't necessarily have faith that they have the proper personnel to be able to execute everything that they want to fix. And that's a big issue. This is a competitive rebuild, and they're trying to win while retooling this entire unit. And the defensive line is just not there. And this is obviously only year 2 with a defensive line that's meant for a 3-4, but you need that 2-gapping nose tackle. You need to have penetrators. Just look at how the Steelers have been successful for years. When they made their last Super Bowl, you had guys like Casey Hampton, who was a first-round pick nose tackle, but he played for over a decade with him. He was great. Now you have Cam Hayward, who unfortunately is out for 8 weeks, but a fantastic 5 technique who can do a little bit of everything, rush the passer, stop the run. You don't have those guys. Harrison Phillips is a fine football player, but what's special about him? What is his outstanding trait other than just being a fantastic human being, which by all accounts he is? There just isn't one. Yeah. And Dean Lowry, a replacement level defensive end, great rotational guy, but he's your starter. Jonathan Bullard's the same thing. Kyrus Tonga, maybe he can be your nose, but you don't trust him right now to do that. Jaquan Roy, high upside pick because he was a projected first rounder going into 2022 and then did not perform well, but nobody at LSU performed well last year. It was a really weird season. They're not going to be able to fix a lot of this year, but you have salary cap space next year, and you got to try and attack the defensive line and get dudes.
Last thing for me, Forno, they have 10 days here, or a little less, I guess. They have a week off before the Chargers game, essentially, here. Do you think the Vikings do bounce back and get their first win of the season against the Chargers at home?
I don't know. And it's frustrating because this is a very good Chargers team. They just met a buzzsaw in the Miami Dolphins. Tua looked fantastic, and they lost a shootout. But that offense is figuring out how to run the football. They have much more determined passing concepts with Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator, and they're not just running stick routes anymore. This isn't going to be the team we saw a couple years ago. And I'm genuinely worried that Justin Herbert will carve us up and they'll be able to run the ball right at us.
Right.
I'm also worried that the Vikings just might not be able to continue. Like, as much as we talk about the fumbles being unsustainable, how sustainable is this passing offense? Are they going to have a dud?
You got to have a run game. You got to have a run game, dude. You cannot survive with just this.
Yeah, this isn't Texas Tech where you can run the air raid and win 8 games a year.
Right.
This is the National Football League where you have to be able to spell your defense. How is Kevin O'Connell going to make those adjustments? You know, if I were him, and I'm not, but I would consider having like the whole Vikings team. Everybody sits in their own meeting rooms, their own individual meeting rooms, and they watch the game live, and they talk about it, and they try and figure out what these guys are doing, because they're going to spend the next couple of days doing self-scouting, watching the back of the film, figuring out what worked and what didn't. But you have to figure something out. And if you don't beat the Chargers, I'm not saying it's over. It's over. 0-3 with what the schedule is shaped up to be.
Right.
It's not looking good at all.
What, at Carolina then, Kansas City at home, San Francisco? I mean, what's San Francisco's run game going to do to your defense unless you fix this thing? And to your point, I don't know how that you can. And look, you can call the first 2 defeats bad luck, or you can say, well, you know, the probability of fumbling 7 times or having 7 turnovers in 2 games is low. But the reality is this: the first thing that you have to fix is your discipline. Like, before you fix anything else, you have to play smart football. And, you know, O'Connell, look, I think he is, from what I've seen, I think he is a good coach. Like, I think he's good at commanding a room, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, he came here as the anti-Zim. And my concern is, you know, year 1 of being a different coach, I think players are like, this is great, love you. You know, you create a culture, blah, blah, blah. But year 2, guys start to push. and guys start to get undisciplined, and guys might say, I think I can get away with this or that. And that stuff's got to be roped right back in. So, like, before they fix anything of the personnel thing, they have to play smart football, and they have to fix what I don't consider to be bad luck. I think it's just stupid mistakes. To your point, Tyler, if you had 4 turnovers in 2 games, which, by the way, is a lot in my opinion, but if you had that, you'd be like, okay, you can fix that. But 7 turnovers? I mean, that's bordering on ridiculous. That's like a bad high school team. So I think you got to, if you're O'Connell, you got to spend the next 10 days getting things right with your team and saying, boys, I'm a good guy. I ain't that good a guy. We're going to get this right. And we're going to do, and if you think that I can't be an a-hole, you're wrong about that. I mean, there's got to be something in the middle here. It can't be all, hey, everybody, get along. It's fantastic. At some point in time, your culture, as PJ Flex says, ball's the program.
Yep.
So
absolutely. They got to figure something out. And I'm at a loss because there's only so much you can do with the personnel. And outside of the personnel, Judd, is Kevin O'Connell going to be willing to actually try to establish the run when it's not working and try to get creative with it? Our answer right now is no.
Yeah, that's a problem.
The nice part is we have 15 games for him to fix it.
Yep.
And change our opinions. But through 2, he doesn't even want to try. And that's inherently frustrating and worrisome.
Awesome stuff, man. Declan, wrap things up and plug your draft show as well with Mr. Fornes here.
Yeah.
Right. Purple Daily on Draft with Tyler Fornes, Miles Gore, and myself will be live on Monday, so we'll have plenty to talk about after an 0-2 start. Plenty of college football takeaways, so be on the lookout for that, plus a live vent line episode, more post-mortem, obviously from the loss against Philadelphia Eagles, so go check that on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, where we just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die.